Okay. Good morning, colleagues, distinguished guests and friends. Look around you. We are gathered here in the Residence Palace, a place that stands in the heart of the Brussels. Of course, today it's also the heartbeat of European innovation, at least we hope. Those who are joining us via the live stream in the back, you are not just observers. Please feel yourself, make yourself comfortable at home, and you are part of this room too. The EADTU-EU Summit. Yeah, it's more or less, it's a tradition, but it's also a necessity. In a world that often feels very fragmented, also within the EU, this is a unique moment every year where the European Commission, university networks, and stakeholders bridge the gap between policy and practice. And that is needed. We are not here to merely discuss the future. We are here to have an influence on that and also to become more or less also part of it, an architect. Our theme this year is Leading Transformation at Scale. And it's not just a nice title. It's like every year for the EADTU, it's also a call to action. We stand at the crossroads where innovation meets responsibility more and more. And to navigate this, we must answer three fundamental questions that will define the next decade of higher education. First, and it always comes first the last few years, AI and values. How do we harness this alien intelligence, sometimes it feels like it, to enhance our mission without surrendering the institutional values and also without surrendering public trust that are our bedrock? Second, the European degree. How do we transform cross-border collaboration from more or less a logistical challenge into a digital reality for every student in the EU? And third, the change of leadership. What kind of courage does it take to drive large-scale transformation while ensuring no student or even no teacher or educator is left behind? So today, this morning, we are going to talk about all this. And I urge you, be active, challenge the ideas, and also use the network lunch at 12:30, not just to eat, but also to spark more collaboration between us. And collaboration that will continue long after we leave this building. Real transformation requires synergy. It requires a bridge between the vision of our universities and the strategy of our European institutions. And we are privileged to have a key architect of that bridge with us today. She has been a driving force in shaping the European higher education agenda. Please join me in welcoming the head of sector for higher education at DG EAC, Kinga Suli. And Kinga, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you today. Does it work? So, okay. But I just wonder how to do with the presentation. Here you go. Maybe, okay. It's there. I have only two hands, so I think it's better to move with that microphone. I hope it works. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be with here, and I'm happy to join you today for the discussion. I'm really looking forward to it because it touches upon key subjects and key fields that we are also dealing with here in DG EAC and in higher education. Just first, a little bit about the policy context. Education is fundamental for the future of Europe. It is the foundation for our democratic society, personal fulfillment, employability, active and responsible citizenship. People and their skills and competencies are at the heart of Europe's main priorities. The future of Europe depends on future-proof skills of the current and next generation to accelerate and master green and digital transition and to ensure European autonomy in strategic areas. We know that the jobs of today are not the jobs of tomorrow. These future jobs will require more high-level skills coming from high level of education. This is why the Commission proposed in 2025 a Union of Skills. Investing in high-quality education is instrumental to support and secure Europe's competitiveness, economic leadership, and social prosperity. The aim is to support more and better opportunities to develop skills that are relevant for our societies and our economies. In this short presentation, I would like to share with you the state of play of the flagship initiatives in higher education that are also covered by the Union of Skills. In this slide, you can see the main architecture of the Union of Skills communication, which focuses on building skills, upskilling and reskilling, circulate skills, and attract and develop and retain talent. But first and foremost, I would like to say a few words about the next Erasmus Plus program after 2028, because this will be a major new development under a new architecture of the multi-annual financial framework. With more synergies and more possibilities to link different key priorities of the Commission. So the dual DNA of Erasmus Plus will not change: skills development, competencies, and EU values and democratic participation. It is also aimed to ensure that everyone has at least one Erasmus Plus experience in their life, be it as a school pupil, vet, learner, volunteer student, or in youth activities. This new Erasmus Plus strives to be as inclusive as ever, and also integrate volunteering opportunities for young people under one framework, merging the Erasmus Plus program with the European Solidarity Corps. As you know, the Commission proposed 40.8 billion euros for the next Erasmus Plus program to preserve and strengthen the inclusive approach across all activities through effective measures to promote inclusion, diversity, and fairness, and support access to the program for all. The new regulation proposes two main pillars for a leaner structure of Erasmus+, learning mobility and volunteering, talent and excellence development in one pillar with learning opportunities for all, and another pillar, cooperation among organizations and institutions and support for policy measures in the second pillar for capacity building and support. So within this framework, we will continue working on our main priorities in higher education. First of all, it is the European Universities Alliances. I'm pretty sure that you are all familiar with it. We have already 65 alliances, 73 if we count the Seal of Excellence holders, who are high quality transnational cooperation projects, but without funding. It includes 570 higher education institutions from 35 countries with a really high number of associated partners. And if we look at the number of students who can have a reach out through these European Universities Alliances, it's about half of all the students studying in Europe, 11 million students. So transnational cooperation in higher education, the European Universities Alliances, are essential for completing the European research and the European education area. And to create a truly integrated internal market for knowledge, research, skills, and competence development. So the Commission proposal in the next MFF and the future generation programs in the European Competitiveness Fund, the FP10 and Erasmus+, they all make clear references to support the European Universities Alliances, strengthening the ground for ambitious and more coherent investment in transnational cooperation, covering both education and research. We are very happy that we can welcome the participation of UK and Switzerland as of the next round, as of 2027, in also the European Universities Alliances. So we hope that in the next call we will have new partners, full partners from these countries on top of the participation of Western Balkan countries that are already ensured now. Then the next one is the Joint European Degree label. You will also speak about the Joint European Degree in this setting now. So I think it's important to set the main frameworks and where we are now with the Joint European Degree. So we received in May 2025 a clear mandate from the Council to work towards the Joint European Degree label and a fixed set of criteria that ensures the high quality of this Joint European Degree. Based on that, we set up a policy lab of experts to prepare an operational guide for the label, which translates the criteria that were set by the Council to very concrete measures so that the new labeled programs can start as quickly as possible. This operational guide is ready, and we hope that we will be able to present it to the Council very soon. And that means that the first labeled programs can start relatively quickly. So just some main good to know about the dimension and the criteria of the Joint European Degree label. There are two main dimensions. One is for program organization. This focuses on operational jointness and structural alignments with the Bologna tools. So these are the A part of the criteria, and the European dimension, the second part of the criteria, focus on opportunities for student skills and societal impact. So all the criteria will be assessed by a binary pass-fail system based on the operational guide. So it makes it easy and straightforward to see how it goes. You know that we have already published the calls for exploratory action for the label and for developing the ecosystem for this label. We received wonderful proposals. So based on the proposals, we can have already a high number of labeled programs in the next few years in Europe. So just to go to the third key priority we are working on is the European Student Card Initiative, which I think is very relevant in this context because the goal is to make the European education area more inclusive, digital, and interconnected. So we have already more than 3,000 higher education institutions connected to the Erasmus Without Paper network. The Erasmus Without Paper enables higher education institutions to exchange information digitally based on common standards. This is complemented with the European Student Card itself, which enhances existing student cards with the standard visual and technical elements for Europe-wide student status validation, and the Erasmus Plus app, which provides students with useful information before, during, and after mobility period. Currently, there is an ongoing consultation on SK Plus, which will provide a solid basis for evolution of the Student Card Initiative, grounded in user experience and practical realities. So I encourage everybody to fill in this stakeholder consultation, because this will be the basis of the further development of this initiative. And finally, just to cover also another key topics that we will discuss today, the leadership program. It's very important to acknowledge that university leadership is key to deliver on a high quality and transnational education. So this is a currently ongoing call where we are also already in evaluation phase. We intend to set up a European Leadership Academy to advance leadership skills to support the transformation of higher education in Europe. So we hope that it can start by November 2026, and it will cover topics like support for transnational cooperation, what universities can do to ensure fundamental values, or how to ensure attractive and sustainable careers in higher education. And with that, I would like to conclude, and thank you very much for your.
No, hello. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for to the Commission for joining us today, giving this overview. Thanks a lot, Stefan. Can you please help me? So, did you? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much to Front Row for setting also the scene. Good morning. I'm Pastora Martínez Samper from the Open University of Catalonia, and also the Open EU Alliance coordinator. It's fine. So, okay. Okay, sorry for the ones online. We are just setting up also the presentation in order for you to see it. So again, thank you very much to EADTU for this invitation and for this round panel on European degree. Thank you very much to my colleagues here in the table, and the panelists. Very much. We're very happy to have Fernando, Tamara, and Mark here today with us, because they will give us a broad perspective of what's going on the European degree, also on transnational collaboration across Europe from three different perspectives. We have Fernando Val from the UNED. He is currently Deputy Vice Rector for International Projects and Relations at the UNED. He's also EADTU Supervisory Board member. He's also part of the Open EU Alliance, and we've invited Fernando for giving us perspective from the universities and how are we experiencing the European degree label, and all the different initiatives we are setting out together. We have also Tamara Siobanu. She will give us the students' perspective. Tamara is from the steering committee member of both the Global Student Forum and the European Students' Union. And thank you very much, Tamara, for being here with us today. She's also been an active part of the conversations with the European degree and not just the European degree. So it's very important to hear the students directly from their perspectives. And last but not least, we have Mark Fredericks here with the Quality Assurance Agency's perspective. Mark is coordinator of international policy at the ENVAO, is the accreditation organization of the Netherlands, Flanders, and Luxembourg. He has managed a unique project on quality assurance of the European universities, alliances, and he's again very much involved in all those developments that we are and will be talking very briefly this morning. I thank very much our representative from the Commission giving this overview on the European degree. Let me just go very briefly through it to make a specific focus on the European degree today, what we are talking about. I must confess, I have to improve my AA skills, but this was just to give you an overview of what we are experiencing now when building up transnational programs today across Europe. It's not that easy. It's kind of very difficult because there are many different roles and ropes here to be tackled, to be addressed. And basically, there's a big bottleneck that makes us very difficult, both for universities, also for students and for agencies, to make something like this seamless cooperation that we want to succeed. And this is mainly the objective of this European degree initiative that is coming after the European approach. The ESG is approved more than 10 years ago now, the Bologna process. But now these new initiatives tries to set up and put on the table this new type of qualification for a transnational joint program, a joint degree, so with at least 2 universities from 2 different countries. To make it easier for the universities, I'm quoting this blueprint of a European degree published 2 years ago, also for students in order to cooperate seamlessly for producing joint programs, delivering a joint degree. But respecting both the institutional autonomy of the universities and also the national competencies of member states and regional governments. So this is why we are talking about today about the European degree, because the motivations are many, but basically are fostering this global competitiveness, again, this seamless cooperation. Of course, employability and skills, as Kinga was mentioning previously, and automatic recognition and student mobility, which is already, well, not as good as we would like to. As Kinga mentioned, so this started 4 years ago now with the European Strategy for Universities, and this is the roadmap we've been following with the different communications from the Council, also from the Commission, with these criteria published May last year that were already presented by Kinga, and this is where we are at. We are at a pilot phase on the European degree, which is this year, next year, with this European degree label, with the criteria and the guidelines to be published soon. And then hopefully in 2 years, we will have this European degree launch as such. These are the criteria, although you can find them in in the publication, but basically, as Kinga mentioned, there are like two big pillars: the program organization, a jointness effort for this program organization, and the European dimension. And let me just finish with a provocative statement, and then I will give the floor to my colleagues in the panel with where's the online education here. There's a specific criteria on this European degree label criteria, which is A8, which is the mobility criteria that makes mandatory 30 ECTS mobility, physical mobility for bachelor and master joint degrees. So, but there's a kind of an exception as an alternative way of making possible this mobility for those students that cannot move, cannot travel. So, in fact, in this audience for open distance teaching universities, I wanted to highlight this part of the criteria and just pointing out, stressing out these differences between face-to-face traditional delivery and fully online education delivery. What's going to happen with these different criteria when they will be published, the guidelines, and we will be part of this implementation phase with the pilot of the European degree. We will be excluded if we want to perform a fully online joint program together or not. This is part again of the conversation. What's going to happen with the inclusivity among these 11 million students of the European universities alliances. The students that are part of the Open EU alliances are around 5% of those. They are traditionally non-traditional learners, lifelong learners. Most of them are studying online. What about the options, opportunities for pursuing these European degrees? And also kind of a policy contradiction with other EU action plans, such as the Digital Education Action Plan, which was presented last year in this summit, by the way, or even the Erasmus Plus regulation. So with this said, I will give the floor to my colleagues in the table, first to Fernando, then Tamara, and then Mark, to ask you for your sides, both on the opportunities, also on the challenges of the European degree. How do you see it? Fernando, the floor is yours. Thank you. I don't know if you can use
Is this correct? Okay. So thank you very much, Pastora, and thank you all for being here. If you ask me about the opportunities, well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is that this is the joint European degree and the joint European degree label, which is a step towards that end, are great tools for integration. If done properly, if both European institutions, national authorities, and the universities strike the right note, this is a very, very powerful tool for European integration, something that I would call a game changer of the importance of some great achievements of the European project, like freedom of movement, freedom of residence, the Euro, or the Erasmus program. When my father was young, he never thought that Spain would share the same currency with Finland. That was unthinkable. When I was finishing my high school and considering what university to attend, I never dreamt there could be a joint European degree. That nobody thought about that. At least nobody I knew, and nobody spoke about that. So this has an enormous potential. And this is not only a great tool for integration, is this history of higher education in the making. We need to be aware of that, because we maybe get lost, we may lose this grand perspective, when we deal with administrative issues, logistical problems, regulatory obstacles, and so on, all that can be overcome if the end is present in our minds. And also, this is a very powerful tool because, again, it's not something dictated top-down by the institutions or the national authorities. As far as I'm aware, this is a bottom-up process. This is civil society, higher education institutions taking part and building this great tool for integration. So this is in terms of opportunities. I've been glad to, I mean, when I was listening to the representative of the European Commission on the 2 pillars of the European degree label, I was glad to see again these pillars, the structure of pillars with that frontispiece, because it reminds me of the European Union of the 3 pillars, which had it was a great time for European integration, and it was a moment when many new things happened in terms of police and judicial cooperation, things that were not in the paper. Now we are at a moment where we can, make a breakthrough. And in fact, if we go through these European degree label criteria that you've mentioned, those of program organization and those regarding the European dimension, we can realize that the goal is first to assure the highest standards of academic quality for joint transnational degrees or joint European degrees, and then make sure that the European dimension is present and is absorbed by both students, staff, faculty, and so on. We don't have time to go into the detail of all this. This European dimension is reflected in inclusiveness, digitalization, multilingualism in terms of exposure to other languages, but also in it's value-driven. European values are the blood of it. The European values, such I'm referring to, well, because it's what the Council has established: academic integration, academic freedom, institutional autonomy, the autonomy of the universities, and also the involvement of students and staff in the governance of the institutions. These these values also are present and are there to ensure that the joint European degree gets the best of the European tradition. So in terms of opportunities, this is what I see. I don't know if I have
1 minute.
1 minute. Then in terms of challenges and obstacles, well, in 1 minute, I cannot outline everything. But of course, you can imagine we have a great diversity, legal diversity. Also, another obstacle is the administrative complexity in terms of handling admission, tuition, student mobility. We have different ways of doing things, reconciling grading systems, reconciling academic calendars. All that is more difficult than it seems at first. And also there is some institutional reluctance to change. Big institutions like mine are reluctant to change because simply we are like a big vessel. It takes an hour to make a small turn. But also small institutions sometimes are contented in their own small size and don't want to jump, to go to a different level. It's normal. It's never stated in so many words, but this reluctance to change is, again, one of the obstacles. Only if we're aware of the final destination, these things can be overcome. More in detail later if we can.
Thank you very much, Fernando. Thank you very much for this short but really broad overview. I will give the floor to Tamara on the student's perspective. Thank you, Tamara. It's working. I think you don't have to do. So I will give you mine. No, this does not work. So mine. I can this one.
This works, yes. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Tamara Ciobanu, here on behalf of the students, and thank you for the invitation to bring the students' perspective into this panel in general in this very important discussion. We are indeed in an important moment when it comes to the European degree. but we have been for a while. So it's not just today, it's not just tomorrow, it's a couple of months that are important for this step. And of course, from a student point of view, when you look as a basic student to this initiative, maybe you stumble upon these documents, even if you as a student don't stumble upon these documents, this initiative carries real promise in general. And that's the moment when we need to make sure that all the questions are addressed in order for this promise to try to become as close as to reality as possible. And looking at the promise, it's basically a stronger European learning experience, which already has a lot of big words. And I would like to start by acknowledging the strong potential of the European degree. And the Council of Resolution highlights with these words that the goal is to equip learners with the skills, knowledge, and more important, values needed to navigate complex global challenges and contribute to a resilient and innovative Europe. So I say, it's already, I would say, a big responsibility that we decided to get on. How is it translates for us as students? Well, maybe it means more joint programs, combining expertise from multiple institutions, better recognition of degrees across borders, rich and international learning environments, interdisciplinarity, research-based learning, lifelong learning opportunities, and very, very important is the idea that this maybe has the potential of offering flexible learning pathways, because in such a crazy society, that's what we actually need. And I would say that this aligns well with what students are asking for. In general, we ask for education that is relevant, education that is international, and very important, that is future-oriented. But of course, this was the promise. So as we look at the promise, it's nice. And then we have a next step, which is the concerns that come with this promise. One of the concerns that we have is about inclusiveness and access. Both of you have already mentioned something about it. As a student, of course, I will have to stress again, in every space in which us as ESU and all student representatives talk about the European degree label, we address this inclusiveness issue because from the student perspective, it must be of the center of this initiative. The framework clearly states that joint programs should ensure equitable access, participation, successful learners. But if we look at the practice, we already see some tensions that might be emerging. And for example, the idea of having a requirement for physical mobilities, such as a number of ECTS, given 30 ECTS mobilities component, it's already a problem because we acknowledge that mobility is valuable and we must recognize that. But at the same time, looking at our students, a lot of them will never be able to do that. They cannot afford it from the financial perspective. They have health issues, they have caring issues, they have legal constraints. Some students actively choose digital or distance education formats specifically because they don't have the capacity to get involved in such stuff. And others face structural barriers, fewer opportunities. So of course, if mobility becomes a strict requirement rather than a flexible opportunity, we risk excluding exactly the students that we say that we will aim to include. And in terms of this, maybe other options can be virtual mobilities, blended learning, collaborative online experiences. And a second concern that we have is the idea of clarity and trust in European degree, because in terms of clarity, me as a student representative, again, I have stumbled upon these ideas. I know what they are. I know what can be done better. I know what already goes well. But as a basic student that hears about the European degree and a label, it will be very, very confusing. We need to make sure that this degree is easy to understand, is transparent in its added value, very important, because a student will come and will ask, okay, what's the difference? Like, what's the added value compared to a joint degree that has, at the end of the day, the same results for me? And we need to make sure that this is clearly different from the existing double or multiple degrees. And moreover, they need to understand what it represents, what benefits it brings, and how it impacts their learning experience and future opportunities. Without this whole clarity, there is a risk of confusion rather than added value. And if this starts tomorrow, for example, if we go to our students and ask, they are completely clueless about it. Is that good? I doubt. So, and of course, in the end, again, you just mentioned a little about it, but it's very important, and we stress here again, it's very important that students should not only be seen as beneficiaries, but also that we co-create these processes and we are active partners in shaping it. Of course, we know that we're already recognized that the student representatives should be involved in the decision-making processes, but it's very important that this goes all the way to the higher education institutions levels and that the involvement is meaningful, not symbolic, and we make sure that it's embedded at all levels. So as a concluding thought, of course, the European degree has the potential to be a flagship initiative for European cooperation, but its success will depend on a lot of key principles, and one of them, as it was mentioned in the beginning, is that no student should be left behind. And we need to make sure that that really happens. This is not just on paper, in a guide, in a framework, and that's where it remains forever. Thank you.
I think it worked. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Tamara, for bringing this student's perspective and all the conversations you've been having for months, let's say years now. And I will go to our last but not least actor in the table, because also quality assurance agencies are key part here. They will be awarding these European degrees, European degree label now. So Mark, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So I work for NVO, and maybe it's important to mention that NVO works in 3 jurisdictions: the Netherlands, Flanders, and Luxembourg. So yeah, it may not come as a surprise also that we have always been very supportive of joint programs since the existence also of the Erasmus Mundus joint masters, and when joint degrees were first introduced in national legislations. We also carried out in the past several projects on the EU-funded projects on the quality assurance of joint programs, including the JOCA project. That was an important input also for the European approach for quality assurance of joint programs. And it's good to see that in the operational guide that has been developed for the European degree label, that's also very much based on the European approach assessment, and that you can really rely on the European approach assessment also for doing an assessment on the European degree label. We have also been very much interested in the quality assurance of European universities on the alliance level. Pastor mentioned already the unique project, which is reference also in the council recommendation, and currently a feasibility study is carried out to look into the possibilities for developing such a European framework. So naturally, we are also very supportive of the development of the European degree label. And we have participated in several pilot projects on the European degree label also. And what is important to say also, I think, and is that there is quite a lot of interest also from European quality assurance agencies in participating in these pilot projects and these projects that are now being planned. We have the director of ENCA here today, and I'm sure she can confirm that also, that many agencies are really taking an active stance in that and then bringing that forward. Of course, the European degree label may not be the answer to all problems in transnational cooperation. And we've seen some mentioned there, and the bottleneck indeed. When it comes to quality assurance, that's often mentioned indeed, but I think it is important also to understand that this is not due that much to quality assurance agencies themselves, but also many times it is due to what is in the national legislation. if a European degree label can indeed lead to a European degree, and in combination with that, with all that is happening also on the alliance level, it can certainly move things in the right direction. Also when it comes to solving the QA problems that alliances are currently experiencing. And for sure, we will see obstacles along the way in the implementation, for instance, in national legislation. But if we do nothing, we know for sure that nothing will change and difficulties in transnational cooperation will remain. There have been many and long discussions on the European degree label criteria, and its interpretation is still going on, although it's almost finished indeed. And also the way that these assessments will be carried out. So there will soon be, as was already mentioned by the Commission, an operational guide that will be approved, and that will then be the basis for all of us, for universities, alliances, and quality assurance agencies to work with, and to start projects to implement the label and to test it as well. So there are many different elements in these criteria, in the European degree label criteria. Perhaps even criteria that not everyone is happy with, but that happens, of course, when you have consultations on that, and you have all the input of all the different stakeholders, and you have to come to a compromise. I would like to point out one criterion which I think is important for you. This is the criterion on at least 30 ECTS physical mobility. From a quality assurance perspective, I think to have such a fixed amount of ECTS is a bit old-fashioned. Not only because it downplays online education and blended mobility, but also the more important question is, what do you want to achieve with the mobility? If you want students to gain international, intercultural competences, then that should be the starting point. So you would have to ask yourself, how can you design the program in such a way that students can gain the international, intercultural learning outcomes that you have set for them? In many cases, this will include physical mobility, but not necessarily always. There can also be blended and online options. And whether the mobility is 30 ECTS or less should also depend on how the whole of the program is structured and the duration of the program. For instance, 30 ECTS mobility is a lot in a 60 ECTS master's program, but it is much less, of course, in a 240 ECTS bachelor's program. So the 30 ECTS physical mobility is a rather blunt requirement, in my opinion. And we should be thinking instead how to reach the learning outcomes instead of forcing specific amounts of ECTS across the whole range of programs. That the criterion makes it possible to offer online or blended mobility alternatives for students who cannot travel is only a solution for those students, but it does not alter the fact that the ECTS physical mobility requirements start, from my opinion, from a false assumption about mobility and not from the perspective of learning outcomes. On the other hand, also to put forward a very positive point, I think, that you probably are also happy with, is the criterion on digitalization, to acquire digital skills and competence. So that is a very positive one. But if you take this criterion seriously, it should also be possible then to not enforce a strict 30 ECTS physical mobility requirement. So hopefully in the further implementation, there is some space for that. Putting it into context, that's always important, of course, for criteria, whatever criteria you use. But of course, from a quality assurance as a quality assurance agency, we will work with the criteria that are approved, and of course also the Alliance have to work with that. So that's thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, to give us this overview from the quality assurance perspective, also to give us some insights also on this specific criteria for this audience today, focusing on the digital education. As we are running out of time, I'm going to ask you to be short on how could we move forward with this idea that Tamara already stressed out, leaving no student behind. What would be your advice? I will ask you for very brief, because I'm going to also want to open the floor for questions. So, Fernando.
I think, okay, so I think that some of the next steps to be taken have to do with first develop this common accreditation process that would really make it easier. And in this common accreditation process, some of these ideas would be included. That would be a great step forward. Also, I think that it wouldn't hurt at all from a legal perspective to have a joint legal status for alliances, so that alliances can act as single entities, make decisions that are clearer from a legal point of view. And then one of the things, and here our alliance, OpenEU, can preach by example, policy experimentation is an important task at this stage, using Erasmus Plus funding. Of course, we have applied for funding for a project to test and refine some of the criteria, right? And these will help us to, in this task of not leaving students behind, leaving no one behind, by refining in particular some of the criteria that you have mentioned.
Thank you.
You said very briefly. So.
Very brief. Thank you very much, Fernando. Tamara.
Well, it's indeed a hard question. And I don't think I have the clear answer. I would say, well, will we do this and then all of a sudden no student is left behind? But of course, there are some things that can be done. Some were just mentioned. I think a lot of them indeed start from quality assurance and how quality assurance will be done. I know there was this idea of having a very brief review, QA review when it comes to the label, and we generally don't agree with this. We think that it needs to be verified in detail, such as any other program that should be, that is going to be accredited. And I think it's very important that when we will launch this, we should draw some lines after 1 year, after 5 years, looking from no student should be left behind perspective, and see, okay, out of the students that really participated in this European degrees, how many of them are mature students? How many of them really felt the difference comparing to a program that does not have this label? I think it's important to, okay, make some strategies, some future strategies, and some idea of how to build it in the future, but also at some point to do a very transparent and clear reporting and really see where we're at and if this really got to its purpose as it was in the beginning. So I think that's also an interesting thing, how we make sure that the reporting is really clearly done, and talking to the graduates constantly and obtaining from them, not from program to program, but in general at the European Union level, to get some numbers and see how many of them really felt the difference and felt like they were included and managed to overcome the boundaries to participate in such a label.
Thank you very much, Tamara. Mark.
Thank you. Yes, as an NVO, we participated in a project called a High Blend project, which was on the quality of blended student mobility. And we developed there, well, we looked at the ESG, the European Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance also, and we developed also a framework in the project for looking at really high quality student blended mobility, and there's a toolkit and everything involved with that. But what we saw in the project is that when it comes to the online part of this blended mobility, that there is quite a lot still to do on the quality. Yeah, so that's certainly requires a lot of attention, and a number of recommendations there are made. I think also from your experience from EADTU, there's a lot that can be learned also for yeah, making this online education within these or the online mobility within the blended mobility also better. So that's also, I think, a way to involve students, because yeah, a lot of alliances are working now on these kind of blended mobility, blended intensive programs. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Yeah, I think that would be something very interesting to focus more on.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, the three of you, for these very nice tips and the suggestions. And now I will open the floor for questions. We have time for a couple of questions, maybe from the public. You need. There are.
Emily Palmer. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the very interesting discussion, insightful discussion. I was wondering if anyone is able to answer how open the European Commission will be to what seems like some very strong recommendations to remove the ECTS requirement to be linked to mobility. Thank you.
So this is who is going to answer? Yeah.
So the policy, the guidelines draft by the policy lab that was already mentioned several times today is making more concrete and operational those criteria that were published by the Council last year. And they've been working hard, not just this policy lab, but with a lot of stakeholders. So we've been part of the process. We've been also consulted as alliances, as individual universities. I'm sure the students were also part of the conversation. And indeed, in the third draft, which was circulated, at least from our ministry in Spain and shared with us, there's an exception for fully online programs, just for those fully online programs in order to include this modality neutral assessment, I would say, and not putting online education as a second best that we sometimes we are always feeling this idea. This was in the third draft. As far as I know, since last information we had, this will maybe be withdrawn in the final publication. So we'll see the final document will be approved in late May by the Education Committee and published in June. So we'll see. But as Fernando was mentioning, also Tamara and Mark, also the Commission. So this is part of a roadmap, is part of a conversation, and now we have these 2 years for experimenting. But here there's a hand raised by the Commission, Emily, so she will answer much better than I.
She felt the pressure.
Yes, absolutely. I felt that I need to come in. So indeed, yes, the previous draft of the experts made an exception for fully online programs, but the policy lab felt very strongly that this should be removed. So it was a clear suggestion, and even more than a suggestion. So it was a very strong plea that this 30 ECTS physical mobility should be maintained for all European degree label programs. So fully online education, it's out. of the possibility to get a European degree label. It doesn't mean that that there cannot be a program which is mostly online or distance, but there should be a physical mobility element within it. So member state representatives and experts felt that that it is such an important element which distinguishes a European degree to other degrees, that it has this mobility element, that it needs to be kept for every program that's labeled. So yeah, that's the situation. Just to clarify that we will present this operational guide to the Education Committee, but we have the mandate for the council, from the council, to do this. So we don't need another approval. So it will not be a discussion point or a negotiation point. So there will be no modifications. But I also wanted to tell you that this is a middle step. So we are continuing to walk on a road towards a joint European degree, a full degree as a qualification. And a label is in the middle of this road. And we will evaluate and analyze the outcome and how well the criteria works, and what is good, what is not good, what needs to be changed, and how, and that will be the basis for the final step towards a joint European degree as a qualification. So this is a sort of transitory period. And there, it also linked to what I heard from the panelists, that it should be a full evaluation and a strong evaluation of the programs. The label is given to programs that has already been accredited. So these are not, because it's not a joint European degree. It's a label to programs that are existing. So, so of course, each program goes through the full evaluation. That's why we tend to share this beautiful picture with the curvy road, and the label is the price what they get if they manage to go through all these bumps and curves and issues with quality assurance. So, so that's why it's a yes/no decision at the end.
As we are, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question, Emily. Thank you very much for the reply from the Commission. I'm afraid we will close the roundtable here. We will have more time to discuss during the coffee break. But let me just conclude by thanking again our panelists, thanking you for being here today, and the ones that are following online. And just the last thing, as we I'm pretty sure you agree with me, the ones that are here in the room are part of the EADTU network. We are sure that we also deserve that prize of the label. We will continue advocating for the modality neutral assessment and focusing on the learning outcomes and the students' perspective, this roadmap and the pathway we have in front of us. Thank you very much. The coffee break is waiting.
Thank you for being punctual. We continue with a coming back. Was so good last year that we want her back. Claire Felin, yeah, please. She will say more about herself. I mean, who was here last year know her very well. She's a member, project coordinator of the European University Association. I leave you the floor, and thank you for the slightly delay. I think that works.
The clicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. I give it a go. Yeah. Do you hear me? Okay. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Claire. I work at the European University Association. I was invited here to talk about our work on digital and AI, which is maybe a slight departure from the earlier conversations, but maybe we can find some connections. We'll leave that to the closing panel. Okay, so I will, for the benefit maybe of those of you who might not be overly familiar with EUA, I will give a little bit of context about who we are and how we work, and then that will lead us into discussing how we came to producing a report on AI. So this is what we call the EUA in a nutshell slide, and it gives a kind of visual of the spread of our membership. EUA has members in 48 countries of the EHEA. Our members are universities and national rectors' conferences. So we involve a wide range of countries in our work, typically making connections between EU level and Bologna process policy developments. Two most recent additions to our network on the side of the National Rectors Conferences were Georgia and Ukraine, both of which joined EUA in 2022. This year is a milestone year for EUA. We celebrate the 25th anniversary, so quite established, and an opportunity to maybe look back and look forward as to what we're going to do in the next quarter century. So how does EUA operate? So our job is to represent and advocate for our members. So the slide here is intended to give a little bit of a visual to illustrate the interplay between EUA and the members. So our work typically involves engaging members in various activities. These are conferences, focus groups, projects, or sometimes thematic peer groups of experts. This outreach and engagement with the members helps us kind of build our knowledge and our expertise and the resources. The resources can take the form of reports or position papers, briefings, recommendations, sometimes very concrete, while also providing us with an evidence base to support our advocacy work. So in essence, EUA facilitates these connections among members and kind of supports the flow of information back and forth between universities and policymakers. I'm kind of giving you this little bit of background because it's how we generally operate, and the work on digital and AI that we've done is no exception. So what have we done on digital and AI? Plenty. I'll focus on the kind of most recent topics that we're looking at. So kind of following a couple of years of work looking at kind of digital transformation more generally, we took a sort of, some would say narrower, some would say broader focus of looking at AI. And to do this, we established a task and finish group from among our members. One thing we were very conscious of and very deliberate in doing was bringing together various viewpoints and perspectives to have a holistic understanding of how AI is impacting universities and really what's driving it. So there was broad expertise within this expert group. We had people from computer science, ethics, statistics, the health sciences, philosophy, and this certainly brought a kind of richness to the debate and the dynamics, and it made for quite contentious, actually, conversations, but that in itself is healthy. So 2026 is now, so a little bit of a hiatus from a direct conversation about AI. What we're looking at more closely now is data. So similarly, we've put together an expert group on this. They're just getting started. But why are we doing this? And I think this is important to say. So AI sort of surfaced as this unavoidable topic. And in the past couple of years, there's been heated conversation around it. But gradually, we saw this shift where people were starting to look at the fuel that feeds AI, and that is data. And there was this sort of slow realization that the successful adoption of AI depends on very robust data management and data governance processes. And I think this is something that maybe universities lack a little bit of maturity in. So stay tuned for that. There's no output from that work yet, but it will come. In parallel, we're trying to dig a little bit deeper looking at AI in science, because what we found when we were putting together the AI report was that there was very sort of lively conversation between the learning and teaching community about the benefits AI, its potential, the drawbacks, all of that. But I think by contrast, some of you may disagree, kind of the topic of AI adoption within university operations was relatively overshadowed and similarly in research. It's not to say that it's not happening or it's not being talked about, but what we found was that conversation was harder to access and harder to anchor. So we're looking at that a little bit more closely now, and we're sort of trying to reach out to various stakeholders to see how these ecosystems of AI and science are evolving. Okay, so I'm going to maybe bring a little bit more focus now and talk about the AI report. So I think it's important to kind of say at the outset here that this was never intended as a kind of roadmap or a set of guidelines for universities as to how to implement AI. Certainly we found, and it was affirmed very early on from the conversations we had with our members, that this would be premature in the first instance and not necessarily very useful either. So rather the intention is this is a document, a publication that can kind of spark reflection among university leaders and hopefully keep the conversation about AI in higher education very much alive. Okay, so where are we? Maybe this will look familiar to some of you. I think a couple of years ago, the initial reaction was kind of shock, and then this was quickly followed by a scramble to get pilot initiatives in AI off the ground. There was sort of hype and pressure around it, and you saw this kind of move faster or get left behind sort of principle infiltrating, which is not necessarily a good starting point. Thereafter, you could see there was a realization that actually it doesn't matter how much resources universities can throw at AI, there needed to be some level of prioritization. So universities turned their attention to what we call intelligent pilots, meaning initiatives that can be scaled up to provide useful services to the community. So there was reference earlier to transformation at scale, and how do you do that? Because, you know, everybody can have their small little initiatives that they're working on in smaller groups, but really the challenge, I think, for universities was trying to understand where to put the money, where to invest. So converting this converting the kind of pilot or startup experience into long-term strategy, there was an idea that guidelines or strategies can support this. But there was a tension here that kind of surfaced, because in the first instance, the guidelines and strategies should serve the immediate community, the university in itself, its staff, its students, and maybe even broader beyond that. But we all know there's pressure on universities to stay competitive. So it kind of then came full circle, and we began to talk about the whole efficiency and productivity discourse, and how what AI's actual merit was. So we'll look at that in a minute. On the site here, I have you'll see in a box, the ethics non-debate, because I think everybody will be quite familiar with this, that, if we're all bombarded with articles about ethics and how to preserve them and how to maintain them and the adoption of AI. And what was interesting is that this, for many, this is actually really a non-debate. There's not much discussion needed here at all. So there was a big sort of suggestion that AI would turn the ethics discourse on its head. But our expert group, and I think even beyond the expert group, they were fairly adamant that in fact, AI does not change long-standing ethical questions. Regardless of how we use the technologies, we need to adhere to the fundamental principles of integrity, responsibility, and transparency. if you have 30 minutes, I would highly suggest that you read the article in Research in University World News written by Halvard Fossheim, that this kind of sums it up very quickly, the ethics non-debate. All right, I'll move forward. Okay. I'll give you maybe a second to take that in. I am aware this is maybe slightly reductive as a graphic. The intention here is to show this kind of dichotomy or the tension between core academic values and the supposed or assumed virtues of AI. So as I said earlier, universities are coming under increasing economic pressure. And for many, and this has sort of it's been there before AI sort of surfaced as the unavoidable topic, but digital transformation was seen as a cost-saving sort of, how to become more efficient, how to become more productive, rather than a kind of steady investment in making real and lasting change. And I think the problem here is AI heightened this misperception, and efficiency is sold as something that universities, or more narrowly than that, science has to strive for. But then this begs the question as when does the pursuit of efficiency actually interfere with the core of academia? And again, this was something that was quite revealing in the conversations we had with the experts and with our wider community of members. There was kind of 3 points that were consistently highlighted. Is that there was need to preserve serendipity and possibility within scientific processes. An overemphasis on automation can in fact endanger academic values. And of course, there can be merit in using AI in science. I don't think that is disputed. I think, in fact, in some disciplines such as astrophysics or some of the chemistry disciplines, it's very well established, and I think that the value is realized and recognized. But the notion that AI can accelerate science in general terms is, in fact, misguided. So, finding the real value of AI for the users, for our universities, and even for humanity is not an easy feat. And I think it's going to be a long, convoluted, and messy process. And this brings me to my next slide, which has lots of twists and turns. And it's not the first time today we see a graphic with bumps in the road. So, I mean, really what we found in a lot of the conversations we had is that the adoption or integration of AI tools in kind of established processes really was a question of change management. And for all that it promises, finding AI's value within that depends on how the changes are managed. So I think, you'll see amongst yourself, there's obviously huge appetite to use AI, and you see that in the experimentation, in the pilots, and this is often, I think, driven by a sense of momentum, which can be good, but also competition, which can also be good, but there are some negative connotations as well. And then there's the kind of hype element, where there was sort of pressure on universities to kind of act immediately, but also think strategically. And those two things can't always happen simultaneously. But I think there's two things that to bear in mind, or two things that came out from this change management discussion. And that is that successful change depends on the readiness of the communities to adapt new ways of working. And this doesn't just apply to new technologies. I think it can apply more generally. But communities are more likely to embrace new technologies if the perception is that these are positive, they can be beneficial and manageable, that this isn't something that's imposed upon university staff or students. But achieving all this obviously depends on a lot. And I've listed a few factors here, and one of them is improving literacy. The other is data governance, which I mentioned earlier, and then, of course, resourcing. which is not easy to solve. So generally, I think this is where universities are at a little bit of a lull maybe, or an impasse, in that there's this kind of attempt to find a balance between the grassroots experimentation among the very curious, which is obviously great and gives rise to lots of innovation. But then you have to sort of balance that with the participatory decision-making, where the whole institution feels involved and heard within a change management process. I'll move on, because no presentation on AI is complete without talking about the risks and the opportunities. And I think this is where things can get very heated and contentious, because there are the advocates on one side, of course, and then there are the skeptics, and then there are the people in the middle who are trying to find their way. This came out quite a lot in the conversations we had. We ran some focus groups with our experts. We did some futures thinking around it. And you could see there was a lot of reticence and hesitance among some. And then others were hugely energetic, and it was all guns blazing, move forward. So I think when we talk about and everybody's had these conversations about the benefits, particularly I think within the classroom, and some see AI's potential for, personalized learning, more tailored pathways, and I think there's some evidence around this. People who don't necessarily thrive in a traditional classroom environment, be it because they are neurodiverse or just not suited to it, that actually AI offers huge potential for more inclusive learning. And I point you here to another one of our expert voice articles written by Monique Mackenzie, who has some experience of this, and I think it's well worth a read. Then there's also the idea that AI can widen participation for non-traditional learners, but will this leave more vulnerable learners exposed? And then there's a kind of bigger question, as if we mainstream this, there's a fear of overdependence. And will this lead to apathy, potentially social isolation? And then with this comes a much wider debate about digital culture, digital sobriety, and well-being of the community, of the university community. So beyond the classroom, I mean, the kind of debate kind of straddles the university and wider society, and there aren't necessarily clear barriers between them all the time. So the spills over, and there's conversation about social justice and the digital divide, and of course the environmental impact. You see people now who are conscientious objectors to AI because they just think the environmental impact is, if not too great, it's certainly unpredictable, let's say. But what we do know is that I think a lot of this is speculative. So the most immediate risks and rewards of using AI are becoming apparent. There's little doubt about that. But the longer term capabilities and the cumulative impact are relatively unknown. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay. Now back to universities themselves. 3. Okay. Great. Role, responsibility, or burden. Demystifying AI. So institutions, they tend towards values-based change. That's kind of a hallmark of universities. And this means that their stance on AI tends to be respected. But of course, this comes with huge responsibility. Similarly, labor market skills. There was reference earlier to the fact that the jobs of today are not the jobs of tomorrow. And again, there's pressure on universities to sort of upskill people, make them labor market ready, and ensure the basic competence. But a lot of people would say, well, in fact, that should be a shared responsibility. Why should this be the preserve of universities alone? Ethical standards. Again, I talked about the ethical non-debates, but it's not a conversation that's going to go away. And I think when we talked to our group, they said it's absolutely critical that universities contribute both on the purely scientific dimension, but also on the human level. And then awareness raising. I think this has to be this is kind of the obvious thing. And the idea is to create awareness of the biases and help students critically assess rather than just passively accept the AI generated outputs. Okay. Hi. As I said, we were slow to draw any kind of real conclusions because the debate is very much open. But we did sort of tentatively have a couple of conclusive things to say. There was a kind of a reference earlier on today to the fact that transformation takes synergies. I think it also takes time. And this is obviously not always realized when technologies are moving very quickly. There's a kind of haste that is not always conducive to real and meaningful change. Universities' missions we talked about already, because they're rooted in values, they do have the capacity to kind of maybe drive a more healthy adoption. Whether or not they do that in partnership or kind of as leaders is an open debate. Literacy, this came out as key. Literacy does not just mean proficiency in interacting with AI tools. It's an understanding that the tools do not exist in isolation, that there's a whole other debate around that. And then digital culture. Well, we'll tell you a little bit more about that when we've come to the end of our data project. I'm concluded. I'm happy.
Hello. Thank you a lot, Claire. Sorry if I didn't mean to rush you. I was just, I have to be a bit strict because the agenda is rich. It was a very nice presentation. I will just really pray for one question only, just because it's also satisfying to respond to a question, but really brief one, if you have it. We can dance a second now. Any question? Otherwise, we pass to the next one. A big applause to Claire. So I invite the next. So we have the one and only. I'm gonna present Klaus shortly while Stefan handle the rest. It's all live here. Okay. So from UK, OU UK, the Open University, Klaus Dieter said that among others, is also professor of distance learning and leadership. I give you the floor. The presentation is up, so enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And all here in the room are one and onlys. It's not just me. Yeah, so let's be clear about that. So shall I check? Yes. Okay. So when looking for recent comprehensive and ideally transnational work on leadership in higher education, I came across this report by, let's go straight to that. Daniela Tilbury, Higher Education for Sustainability, Leadership, Learning, and the Development of Senior Teams. And the report is a comprehensive take on leadership for sustainability, really good stuff in there. But as I read the report, it became clear to me that this covers general leadership in higher education really well. You could replace the term sustainability with inclusiveness, AI revolution, or 21st century and still learn much from it. Since this is a European report, I assume that the challenges listed here resonate with most of you. The need for holistic solutions, the barriers, the pressures, the need to change mindsets of individuals and institutions. And I added the moral and ethical expectations that wasn't in the report because I think they deserve calling out. Think of the trans inclusion discussions, academic freedom, or the wars that are raging in the world, and everybody wants a university to take a stance one way or the other. So let's talk about some of my assumptions and ideas that underpin this talk. And it will be a personal talk. You may agree with what I'm saying or not, and that's fine. We can talk, we can discuss. First in my mind, but last in the list here, leadership is always personal. Broadly, how we feel and show up as leaders. and I will reflect on the sources I introduce, on my own leadership experience over the last 15 years as I go through the presentation. Change leadership for me is an oxymoron. I cannot think of any leadership challenge that did not involve change. We are living through times with shifting paradigms. Managing the status quo is not an option. Leadership is never about staying the same, even if the goal is only to continue doing what we already do, but doing it better. Very few change projects are truly bounded, limited. They are often complex, they're highly contextualized, and they can be really difficult to implement. ChatGPT gave me the words, and that's really the only time when I used it, for item 3, and that was about what's specific to higher education as opposed to the private sector. And you have here values, reputation, tradition, autonomy. I'll say more about development, dynamic and development later, but the way I see it, change in leadership is always about people. They need to be on board, and this is why communication has always been the key to success. I just you can read through, this is a bit sort of my own leadership portfolio. I just want to say this as an executive dean at a large institution, my faculty with about 33,000 students and some 1,800 staff, that's comparable to King's College London in terms of size, Leeds, Birmingham, Northumbria University. Of course, these are all ballpark figures. The other part, the executive part, is I'm a member of the Vice Chancellor Executive, and I have leadership responsibility for one of the largest HEIs in Europe. And as part of that, I contribute to several key university initiatives, most prominently the ones mentioned on the slide: financial adjustment, strategy, growth, and partnerships. And aside from being a dean, my portfolio includes sustainability, learning, teaching, assessment, and quality assurance. Those are the kind of things that I've developed over time. The Tilbury report identified 8 leadership styles relevant to successful leadership. These styles were described through a total of 55 competencies and skills. And I'll just repeat that number, 55. No individual can cover them all. And this means that leadership is always teamwork. That's the only way the vast list can be actually covered, which is why the title of the report includes the development of senior teams. And to give you a flavor of what those are, I've picked a few from each of the styles in the box to the right, and then colored those in red that resonated more strongly with me. From that exercise, you can really get a sense of what matters to me, and that cuts across different leadership styles. So you could ask yourself, what's the point then? Well, such lists have value because they help us reflect on our own preferences and strengths. They help us recruit teams that cover collectively key competencies, and they help us design leadership programs for succession and pipeline planning. As leaders at every level, rather than focusing on leadership styles, we bring our individual qualities to our work, and we choose to focus on what matters to us and not what makes little difference. That's particularly true for leaders at the top, which 3 McKinsey partners found out when they interviewed 200 of the best CEOs of the 21st century. And they turned their research into a book called CEO Excellence. And I would just add that what matters at the top actually matters all the way through all the leadership levels. But here you are. The authors noticed that when you ask leaders, what does a CEO really do? No 2 leaders come up with the same answers. In their research, they identified 6 key responsibilities. You have them there in the center, which bring together 18 domains, and these are the ones outside, which then they go on to describe in detail over 300 pages. The book's a treasure trove of ideas and inspiration, but also highlights that leading successfully is a highly complex and challenging task, And they mentioned that, in fact, over the past 2 decades, 30% of Fortune 500 CEOs have lasted less than 3 years, and 2 out of 5 new CEOs failing in their first 18 months on the job. That makes higher education a pretty stable environment, and there's some good leadership there. So we can take that at least away. When you look at the slide, you probably can link many of the concepts and responsibility to what I've just said about the Tilbury report, just slightly different language. And that's quite common in the literature. If you read so much out there, styles often overlap or present just slight variations of essential core ideas. And coming back to Tilbury and the leadership competencies, which is expressed here not as static, absolute values, but dynamic values in progress. And to give you a better reading experience, you can't read that, obviously, I've typed up the essential elements. Instead of framing leadership as actions of achievement, such as I know about, I have made a change, or I'm a reflective practitioner, instead of all this, the authors emphasize the dynamic and developmental nature of leadership, the learning journey of becoming, learning to change, learning to work with others, and learning to know better, for example, getting better at anticipating trends or navigating ambiguity and uncertainty. When I read all that, what comes up for me with this learning focus is the question, when does leadership actually begin? Is it when you've been promoted into a leadership role? If so, what were you doing the weeks, months, or years before? The dynamic learning and development frame allows us to observe and acknowledge leadership in the making. It allows us to locate leadership not solely in formal roles, but in leadership dispositions and behaviors that develop over time. So I started my leadership journey sort of a decade and a half ago, mid-level leadership, then the scope, the reach, and the responsibilities grew over time. But my leadership and the ability to make a difference did not start with the formal appointments. It emerged from how I'd worked in teams, followed leaders, and role model desirable behaviors to others. It is the forever learning paradigm that holds together leaders and teams at all levels within an organization. It is the only way in which the slightly cheesy statement, everybody is a leader, you've heard that, in which that can make sense. So in this last slide, now I would just like to share reflections from past reading experience and also leadership training that I've had. Right now, I'm on the Advanced HE Top Management program in the UK, and much of the learning there comes from conversations and sharing of experience and less on leadership styles, things like that, and giving feedback to each other. We recently had an international residential week where we visited 8 institutions in Berlin, based in Berlin and Brandenburg. We all benefited from meeting those colleagues who lead in very different contexts to those in the UK, and those here from Germany will know how complex it is. When we looked at it from the UK perspective, you just ask yourself, how do they ever get anything to change, you know? And what's the real power of a rector here? Yeah. But the experience of talking to people made me really think this is perhaps where EADTU could do more by bringing people together and sharing those experiences. And I'm glad to have heard earlier today about the European Leadership Program. That seems like a great idea. So already talked about change in leadership as a dynamic project. Now, strategies, objectives, and plans need regular reviews and adjustment. They rarely predict where we end up. In fact, there's research about that. You have a strategy, you just never get to the end of it. But that's not a measure of their usefulness. It seems to me that the value of strategy, objective, and plans lies in the process of developing them and reviewing them in light of internal and external changes. Think about ChatGPT coming out. Think about the pandemic. Just as leadership is a process of learning and development, individually and in teams, so are strategies, objectives, and plans a process for people to come together and align their visions and values. Now, leadership styles, key characteristics, capability, and excellence. You can read it there. I'm no biologist, but I wonder if the often used DNA metaphor is actually useful here. The 55 leadership competencies and the elements of the CEO excellence model, what if these are a kind of HE leadership DNA that we all have as potential, but just as no one person lives like an exact genetic copy of another person, leaders also differ depending on which leadership genes are switched on and off, or what epigenetic adaptations might have happened because of local environmental and psychological pressures. Next, pick the right people for your team and for each challenge. If we cannot be good at all the capabilities that are needed, well, let's make sure they are represented in the teams we create or work with. Let's focus on what we are good at, what only we can deliver in our unique and valuable way, and find others equally unique and valuable for those capabilities that we cannot serve quite as well. Prioritize and stop doing things. This is extremely hard in my institution. It may be similar in yours. It may be a sign of the sector. In times of financial and resource constraints and contracting staff bases, it seems obvious we cannot continue to do the same with fewer key colleagues and resources. Yet that's exactly what's happening. Colleagues routinely complain, and rightly so, that they have to do the same or more with less resource. We must learn to do less with less, but what we do, we must do better. When we say culture, we mean people. That's a shorthand for it. Culture is always located with people. There's just no other way. It's the people who experience the change for better or worse. We might think of IT change as technical, but it's actually deeply personal to users. And I realized that far too late into some of the projects that I led. And because it's all about people, it's also about how we communicate our vision to our colleagues and changes, so colleagues can start to own the change, or if they don't, at least tolerate it respectfully. And finally, organizational memory and unaddressed institutional trauma shape people's change disposition. In my time at the OU, I've seen many changes that appear to have left. What have they left now? Sorry, deep scars with many of my colleagues. These scars were traumatic for them and have shaped the emotional and cultural makeup of our institution. There's a cultural memory for that. The situation is not unchangeable, immutable, but it's also often not visible on the surface. It can drive people's disposition towards change at all levels. Even if we cannot address these worries head on, we must factor them into our change timeline, by which I mean to say some change will take the time it needs. Now, and I want to finish with something that's overtly simplistic, perhaps, for this audience, and I apologize. It might even be naive, but it's something I found really, really useful when we work on change with others. And it's because all change is with conversations between people. And the secret of what I'm revealing to you now is perhaps at the core of the human condition, of how we interact with each other and how we create communities that, if needed, can change the world. Now, keep these three ideas in mind when you deal with people. It has served me well. Be kind, be respectful, and trust others until you know otherwise. Thank you.
No, it was very amazing. Bravo, bravo, Klaus. Any question, but briefly, Diego?
Do I have a reputation of not being brief? No, I'm just going to make a point, an observation, and we'll try to connect it to the two presentations. And it's about ownership. You mentioned ownership, and I think that's the key part of change management and how we are able to transform institutions. And the way I was going to connect is with AI and how AI is invading higher education and how people, particularly academics, are looking at management to find solutions, easy solutions to tackle with the AI. And we are not able to find these solutions because obviously AI is constantly changing and adapting. The issue of change, and I think it's very much what you said, is about involving people, respecting people, listening to people, and making them part of the solution, and making them responsible also to find a solution by ownership or appropriation of what we are trying to achieve as an institution. So I'm really very happy with your presentation. I found it really resonates with the current state as we are as an institution. And I think it makes very well, it's very well connected with the previous presentation because of how we are tackling AI and how we think about tackling AI as an institution. If we find a policy that comes from top to the bottom, it will not be sustainable. It needs to be something built with people, and it has to be appropriated by people. Thank you, Klaus.
And if I just add, I love policies. A good policies really, really helps, but people feel constrained by it, but it kind of limits our choices. And that's a bit like in a supermarket where you've got 25 different toilet papers. Which one you're going to choose? So I think policies are underrated, and they always feel they come from the top. We need to work to get them developed from the bottom. But I totally agree. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Richard Tufts, ex-Open University, many years ago. Your 3 points up there, be kind, be respectful, trust, is probably not met by certain people in a different country at the moment. So one of the things I was talking about, all your change is looking to a positive future, when now perhaps we're looking at probably not moving backwards. Is there a role of resilience somewhere in your sort of areas that you're putting forward?
Okay, so resilience, do you mean resistance?
Well, you define.
Yeah, I think resilience we all need, we're knocked down, we need to get up again. That's leadership. Resistance is also important, absolutely, when things are, when they cross a line where we often talk about the red line. It's a dangerous one, yeah, to fix it. But there are certain values that we would not want to undercut in all the change. Other than that, we have learning and teaching models. We have assessment models that are 200 years old, and they are not fit for purpose. And actually, all the people I speak to know it. It's just how do you make that happen at local level in teams? How do we give them the license to change where they think, well, we're not allowed to do that, or the systems don't allow us? How do you give them the license to push? How do you make the institution from the top create that environment where people have agency? And I haven't used that word before, but here it comes. We have agency to make the change that we all need to see. And then at a higher level, how do we get UK regulators, disciplinary regulators, and European level as well? Of course, how do we get them to come up with new ideas? And the question of proctored online exams is a really interesting one. I'm involved in that too. We have, on the one hand, finance and accounting regulator. We've got the nursing midwifery council, where you really think, nursing, they work, we want to have good nurses, that's a life and death. You don't want to be a patient, of a nurse who's done the wrong thing. You don't. On the other hand, and they've been brilliant, for example, during the pandemic, where we couldn't have practical exams, we found ways of doing it more online. Whereas Institute of Physics, no way to move about, to make any changes. So this will take time, but my outlook is positive. I can't find any other way.
Speaking of time,
yeah.
Yes, okay. Thank you. A big applause to Klaus Dieter.
Thank you. Thanks.
We are going to move forward, unfortunately. All the very beautiful things don't last. So, but on the positive side, I want to welcome the final panelists. So, Anke Alfito will moderate the session. Then we have, I'm going to present to you. Anna Gober-Forenqua, we have Francesco Bellotti, Mattia Bellotti from Secretary General of Ethiopia. Then we have Beck Kinga, if it's possible. Thank you. We will change the names in a second. So.
Okay, as we are late, as always, we just start. So good morning and welcome to this closing panel of this EADTU-EU Summit for 2026. I think that now it's time to bring all these conversations together. We have talked about artificial intelligence, leadership, European higher education policies. So now we have this opportunity to have these great panelists with us that they have joined, and maybe they will be able to connect all these different issues. I think artificial intelligence and leadership are quite connected, but then this idea of European degree or European degree label is something that maybe it will be able to push all these previous concepts together. So let me introduce them briefly. First, I am pleased to welcome Anna Gober, Director of the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, ENQA. Anna leads one of the key organizations in the Europe higher education landscape when it comes to quality assessment, quality assurance. She also coordinates ENQA's contribution to developments in quality assurance within the Bologna process and at the international level. She brings nearly a decade of experience in higher education quality assurance, including previous work at the European University Association. So Anna, it's really a pleasure to have you with us. And I'm also very pleased to welcome Mattia Bellotti, Secretary General of the Utopia Alliance and member of the For You For All Forum board. In your role in Utopia, you have led the Alliance's central office in Brussels and supports the implementation of its strategy, governance and institutional cooperation. And through his work in For You For All, he also brings a broader perspective on the development of the European universities landscape. His profile, therefore, combines higher education, innovation, European cooperation, including previous senior roles at EIT Digital. So welcome, Mattia, and thank you for joining us. And I'm equally pleased to welcome again Kinga Zuli, Head of the Sector for Higher Education Policy at the European Commission's Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, DG EAC, if I'm correct. So thank you very much for joining us in this final or closer panel where we try to bring together the conversation between artificial intelligence, leadership, and European higher education policies. I would like to start with a brief reflections on these three themes. I've taken some notes during the excellent presentations that we have had the opportunity to listen before. I've said these are not separate conversations, and they all together point to a shared challenges that is what we have been doing during this morning, is to move from experimentation to transformation at scale. That is the real challenge, and we have to do that while we preserve this academic mission, these institutional values that we have been mentioning during the previous presentation. So let me start with a brief reflections about artificial intelligence. As we have been talking about, and especially with the presentation of Claire, it's not simply a more tool. It's not a layer that we put on top of all the other challenges that we have. It's a part of a deeper institutional and structural shift. No, I think that as universities we have gone through, or we are going through, these 5 stages of grief. No, I think that we have left behind, I hope so in my institution, we have left behind this denial or even anger stage. I think that we finally get it, and we are now facing this idea of acceptance for sure and how we integrate that. So the question is not whether higher education will use AI. I think that this is something that we have overcome. The question is how we use it, under what conditions, and in support of which educational purpose. That is the key point that we need to solve. If AI is used only to automate faster, we are missing the real opportunity. It has been said, no? But if we use it to help feedback, to strengthen the relationship between learning and researching, if we support learners more effectively, if we widen access and improve inclusion, it can become a valuable asset. Is this what is in our hands? And I think we should pursue a model of AI that is clearly pro-teacher, pro-student, pro-worker, pro-citizen. And in that sense, I think that, as we have heard today, this transition is not linear. No, some of the slides have represent these open loop pathways, and it's not certainly a technical issue. It depends on, we have heard about that just a minute before, on literacy. We have talked about data governance, clear guidelines, leadership, and resources. Therefore, as leaders of higher education institutions, we have this dual responsibility to demystify AI, that has been said in the previous presentation, and to protect these core academic values. And this leads naturally to the second theme that we have heard about in the hands of Claude, this leadership and leadership. Many of the issues we face today are not problems with simple technical answers. This is something that it also came into my mind. We're facing dilemmas. There's not a right or wrong solution. We have to be aware of which is the problem that we are facing and how we position it as universities. So we have to deal with situations shaped by uncertainty, competing values, and difficult trade-offs. We have to deal with trade-offs. They are not challenges that can simply be solved. We have to navigate, they have to be navigated with judgment and clear, strong sense of purpose. And in this context, as it has been explained before, leadership cannot be understood only as control, speed, or top-down direction. What higher education needs today, maybe more than ever before, is a different approach. One with the capacity to listen, to learn, to make these trade-offs very explicit, and to build legitimacy and trust around change. This is what we have to do now. Because lasting transformation does not only depend on making decisions and trying to this right or wrong decision. That is not what we have to do. It depends on whether academic communities, institutional partners, and society at large can understand the direction to travel. They have to recognize the purpose behind it and the trust, and they have to trust the way change is being led. So transparency is also something that we have to take in mind. No? And this is what alliances and networks like as EADTU matters so much in these times. But today we have also heard something equally important, that leading change at scale means learning to navigate complex systems, means collective commitment, advocacy when it is needed. And this brings me to the third theme, this European degree. Is one of the most ambitious developments on the European higher education agenda, and its value will depend to a great extent on how we define it and how we make it work in practice. No, as we have also heard earlier, this pilot phase is both an opportunity but also a stress test. It can unlock new forms of transnational cooperation, automatic recognition, and joint programs, but it also exposes very concrete challenges for institutions, students, and quality assurance bodies in implementation, in recognition, and alignment across diverse national frameworks. For that reason, I think that the European degree should be digital ready by design. We are in a moment, in a landscape where everything has to be digital too. It should recognize that meaningful European learning can take place through physical, blended, and virtual formats. When we talk about to everyone, and it has been mentioned in some of the slides before, it has to be to everyone, no? And we have also seen, I think it was in one of the pastoral slides, that says it's to make easier for universities. I think that it's not to make easier for universities, it's to make easier for students, no matter what their conditions, no? So, and this is especially important if we want to, if we want that the European higher education area to be truly inclusive. So, now it's time to make all this conversation together. When we look at AI, leadership, and European degree together, I think that one common message becomes clear. Transformation at scale, it's not only about innovation, it's also about purpose, trust, inclusion, and interoperability. So the challenge, that is the challenge before us, and that's why this discussion matters. And that's why to bring the opportunity to have this conversation together matters now. So then I will invite Anna, Mattia, and Kinga to share your own reflection on these themes and how we are able to put all the three of them together and make them more easier for higher education institutions and, if it's possible, for its rectors. So thank you very much. So I don't think, Anna, if you want to
Is this one working? Yes. Okay, good. Yes, thank you very much for the introduction and indeed for the invitation to join you here today. For those not familiar with ENCA, we're the European representative body of quality assurance agencies. So we have around 60 agencies from across the European higher education area that are our members, and an additional 40 affiliates that are based worldwide. Actually, last week, we all came together in Budapest for our annual members forum, which ran under the title of Strengthening Trust in an Evolving Higher Education Landscape. And we discussed higher education policies and specifically activities of QA agencies through the lens of trust and trust building. So I'm happy to have heard the word trust mentioned by you several times in the introduction today. When I was preparing for today's session, I thought maybe I frame some of the reflections through that lens in an attempt to kind of bring some of these themes together. Of course, in democratic societies, responding to and leading in periods of change requires trust. We're willing to take a step into the unknown and to try new things because we trust the people, the organizations, and the frameworks around us. So turning specifically to the topics of today's event, and I will focus, I think, primarily on the European degree and artificial intelligence, framed a little bit through this focus on trust. For the European degree to work, we need to trust each other. And I think this takes on several dimensions. We need political trust, not always easy, I think, but we need to trust that once national authorities have signed up to this initiative, that the legal frameworks will be amended in order to enable it. And this always also requires a political commitment to international cooperation, to mobility, and to recognition, which requires a trust in each other's systems at the political level, which is perhaps even harder than at the institutional level. Because the institutional trust, in some respects, we already demonstrate very well. We already have many consortia that work together, whether that's through the formal European University alliances, or simply through other consortia which exist to implement joint programs. Let's remember, joint programs are not a baby of the alliances. They've existed for a long time before that. We also need societal trust. We need society to trust in the degree and what it stands for, that students will have the learning outcomes, the competences, and the experiences that they're supposed to come with the qualification. And we need student trust. We need students to sign up to these programs. They need to trust that the program will offer them what it says they will, that there will be high quality learning and teaching, and that it will be recognized for further education and employment across Europe at the end of the studies. So coming from an association of quality assurance agencies, it won't surprise you that I will say a few words on the role of quality assurance in facilitating and underpinning these dimensions of trust. Trust is not about blind faith. Trust is the willingness to be vulnerable with another person or an institution based on the expectation that that other will behave in a positive or a reliable way. So yes, there's an element of uncertainty, but we also have to have an expectation that people or systems will behave in a certain way in order to trust them. And predicting that behavior with confidence is made much easier if we're all working within a common framework of values and principles and standards. So fora such as the Bologna process and the European education area give us the space in which to agree, to discuss, to agree, to disagree, of course, and eventually reach a compromise on what we consider to be the core components necessary for us to trust each other. Now, we see this process of discussion and compromise in progress at the moment. One of the core initiatives that my organization is involved in is the revision of the European standards for quality assurance in the European higher education area, and the simultaneous revision of the European approach for the quality assurance of joint programs. And this is based very much on an extensive stakeholder consultation and many, many rounds of drafting in order to reach an outcome that we believe is sufficient for us all to have confidence in the accreditations that we give to our education and our qualifications. And we've seen a similar process with the development of the criteria for the European Joint Degree, and now the operational guide for the European Joint Degree label, which, as Kinga has already elaborated, there's been a lot of rounds of consultation, both through the policy lab, but also in communication with other stakeholders. But of course, it will always be a compromise. We're never going to produce a tool, a set of standards, a methodology that absolutely everybody agrees with. But we're well on the way to launching and implementing the label. And of course, quality assurance agencies will play a key role in ensuring that institutions have the policies and processes in place to deliver on their promises, particularly regarding the label criteria. Of course, accountability and an appropriate amount of supervision lay the foundation for trust. So it's important that we get this right at the level of the European Joint Degree label if we are to move on to the degree afterwards. The label is, as you've said, a stepping stone to the degree. We need to trust in the label if we have any chance to trust in the degree as a concept further down the line. What's really important is that all of this is based on existing tools. And we've heard already that the processes for awarding the label are very much based on first having an accreditation of the program using the European approach for the accreditation of joint programs. And my organization will be offering, we hope, if our funding proposal, our project proposal is successful, we were hoping to offer a lot of support to bring agencies together to discuss how to implement this, to ensure that there is a consistent approach to the assessment for the label across agencies. Now, one of the areas of skepticism, perhaps, that ENGA has towards the degree lies in the requirement for national authorities to change their legal frameworks to accommodate it. We've seen in the past, and unfortunately still today, that one of the main obstacles to implementing the European approach for quality assurance of joint programs has been the legal barriers, and Mark from NVO already elaborated on that. And unfortunately, based on the past action or inaction, there's a lack of confidence that the national frameworks will indeed be changed in order to allow the European degree. So this means that there's no solid expectation that national authorities will behave in this positive or reliable way that we need for trust. That said, we've seen positive signs following the growth of the alliances and the preparations for the label. We know that some systems that previously did not allow the European approach for the quality assurance of joint programs and did not recognize it now do so precisely because of these developments. So it has been a positive impetus in that respect. And so perhaps we can be optimistic looking ahead. Just a few words then on artificial intelligence. It's a huge topic, of course, so I will limit my reflections to what's coming out of the conversations with quality assurance agencies. Last year, we held a workshop on the use of artificial intelligence in quality assurance in response to requests from our members to exchange between members on this topic. And we see kind of three areas that agencies want to address or want to talk about. There's the use of artificial intelligence in their own processes as quality assurance agencies. There's the use of it within or how agencies can provide guidance and support to institutions in how to use it. And then there's the specific quality assurance and accreditation of institutions and how artificial intelligence can be used in that. Now, ENCA is no special expert on artificial intelligence, certainly not. So it's rather, our role is rather about facilitating these conversations and helping to draw some common conclusions. And a result of the workshop we did last year, we developed a set of guidelines on the responsible use of artificial intelligence in external quality assurance. I think it won't surprise you that most elements of these guidelines are statements that could apply far beyond quality assurance. So it's about using AI in a way that complies, of course, with regulations for data protection, consent, and privacy, transparency and communication on how it is used, support for equitable and fair access, as well as ethical, inclusive, and sustainable use, training and literacy, innovation with caution, which encompasses fitness for purpose, regular review and adaptation of how it is used in external quality assurance, of course, human oversight and accountability, and a strategic approach to the use of artificial intelligence in external quality assurance. But overall, we found that agencies are looking for guidance in an environment of uncertainty. They want some common ground so that we can continue to trust that the outcomes of external quality assurance remain based on the principles for QA that we've all signed up to within these fora that I mentioned before, particularly under the Bologna process. I finished very briefly a couple of practical examples of how we see agencies using artificial intelligence. They're using it to screen self-assessment reports for completeness of information. They're using it for data analysis to identify where there are problem areas. They're also using it for thematic analysis to identify trends on specific themes or common areas for development across a whole system. What it is not being used for is full QA report writing for making compliance and accreditation decisions, and certainly not as a replacement for peer review. Spoke about the kind of fundamental principles for quality assurance that we've all signed up for, and peer review is one of those. But clearly it's very resource intensive for an agency to use artificial intelligence properly, to set up, to train and test it properly. And it also requires a certain amount of knowledge and skills to use appropriately, which may not be common within quality assurance officers working for an agency. So this is something that's also being taken into account in the update of ENCA's professional competencies framework for quality assurance, which will be republished in a few months. Finally, of course, we've had a discussion about artificial intelligence in the revision of the ESG, the Standards and Guidelines for Quality Assurance. And in the public consultation on that we ran at the end of last year, one of the key aspects of feedback was that there should be explicit reference to artificial intelligence in the standards and their guidelines. So we now have there in the current draft a requirement for institutions and agencies to consider the responsible human-centered use of artificial intelligence with human oversight, of course, within their policies for quality assurance in, as I say, both institutions and agencies. I'm very conscious that time is short, so I'm getting eyes from this direction here, so I'll wrap up here and pass on to fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Brief, but to the point. So, thank you, Mattia. That's your turn.
Thank you and good morning. So indeed, I am the Secretary General of Utopia, one of the 65 alliances, but I'm also involved since the beginning, even before the beginning of the initiatives in the For You For All, which is the community of practice of these existing 65 alliances and beyond, meaning beyond also involving Seal of Excellence, so alliances that got a seal from the European Commission but did not get funded in previous occasions, but also several of our external stakeholders at the European level, including some here at the table, for example. And today I'll try to provide a kind of a mix of personal, alliance, and as well as For You For All community of practice perspectives on what we discussed today. And I like to start, first of all, when I was invited to this event, I don't remember, about 2 months ago. And yeah, I was recently, just a few days before, talking with a friend, also a former colleague, that was telling me that, you know, when he was 15, his father gave him an article and he said, well, before you choose your higher education path, read this article. And it was an article from an MIT professor, saying that, well, you know, the world will be different, educations and skills will be different, the world of, let's say, the world will be different in terms also of labor employment. So please, you know, this was a very visionary article, and of course, he was inspiring and, you know, to define and also to reflect on really what you would like to do as a future student, and then indeed before going into the labor market. And I think now this article was written about 20 to 25 years ago. Now we are really at that moment that was indeed envisioned in that article. We are really at a moment of change on how we do education, on change how we work, and on change at the world scale. And I think today also when I was invited, I was reflecting indeed on the fact that, well, we have 3 massive topics, if we can say, that we are discussed here today. And I was wondering, well, it's very ambitious on one side, you know, to be able to tackle them only in a half a day. But on the other side, it also made me reflect, and I was really, in also the presentations before, both the panels and the 2 beautiful presentations on AI and on the change leaderships made us reflect on really how these 3 topics are absolutely interlinked, and how really we are in the phase of 2 giant transformations, one related to AI and the other one related to the European degree, but I would say to a broader level on how we deliver education, on how which skills we deliver to students, and also how we provide certifications, if we can say, how we accredit these skills for the future of students, or broader even of lifelong learning. And of course, we need a change. So change leadership here is fundamental to achieve both changes. I think if you're reflecting first on the topic of AI, I think AI is completely changing not only the labor market, but really the higher education market. If you're looking to the life of a student, let's say, AI will play a massive role even before you become a student, really on how people will choose their educational path, and also how higher education institutions will need to recruit their students, advertise their programs, and then after the time of recruitment, really evaluate also the admissions criteria for students, because indeed it will be completely different, and already is, the way a student can provide a motivation letter, the way a student can provide his application to a higher education institutions for a full program, or even just for a short course. And of course, AI is completely also changing the way students will learn, the way we'll teach, and the way we'll evaluate students. Especially on the evaluation, I think we need really to have key reflection on really what skills we need to evaluate of students, what are the best way to evaluate students. In some cases, exams as we used to do before might be completely different in a few years. I mean, I'm coming from an engineering background, and you used to have open books exams because there was basically no book with the solutions. Nowadays with AI, I think if you are smart enough to use AI, you might actually get to the solution much faster. So I think indeed we really completely need to change the way we teach, but also the way and the type of skills we want in our in people, and of course people that will become future leaders in Europe and probably even beyond. And then if we move to the other topic, we have indeed reflections today on the European degree. Of course, I'm coming from an alliance and also involved in the community of practice of alliances, and you know that alliances are somehow seen as a vector, maybe as the pioneers, let's say, tools, and let's say, if we can call them, and platforms to deliver a European degree. Well, first of all, and it was already said before, we have to remember that in reality, there is no legal obligation that a European degree must come from institutions in alliances, but really this is a transformation at a scale in Europe, which will involve all the higher education institutions. But I think, second of all, we also have to understand the problem, let's say, and the future also from a different perspective, because indeed, the European degree and in general joint programs will really change the way higher education institutions collaborate and develop jointly curricula. But at the same time, we also have to consider that although thanks hopefully to the, let's say, simplification of administrations that we have and legal barriers that we'll have in the next years, the number of degrees will be higher, the demand for this type of joint degrees will also be higher, and from the small amount of students that today are participating to our joint programs, in future we can hope and we believe and we think that more and more students will be involved in these programs. However, we have to remember that this is only one side, let's say, of the higher education sector that we have now and that we will have in futures. And of course, here it's very relevant, and we are focusing, and several of your institutions are focused on lifelong learning. But really, we also have other type of education's activities and educational programs that we need to deliver in the futures, which can, of course, involve different type of formats, different type of international collaborations, both between academics and therefore between institutions, but also between the students involved. And of course, I'm saying this with a mixed feelings, because indeed, for all perspectives, but also from our alliance perspective, we are very much welcoming the changes that are happening related to the European degree, and we look very much forward, to be on board and to be able to, let's say, award the European degree label and one day European degree programs to students across Europe. But on the other side, both from an alliance perspective, but also from a personal perspectives, we really need, and we also talked here, to reach as many students as possible and really to have internationalization as a core part of the student's life. And this is something that, for example, in our alliance, Utopia, is something that we have tried to do as an initial strategy. Alliances started in 2019. The European degree there was not yet as concrete as it was today. So really our model was really to try to have an international component, let's say an international experience, whether online, physical, in blended, or in any other type of formats, in the existing curricula across all our institutions. Of course, we are very much far from having it in all the existing curricula, as we have more than 300,000 students across our institutions. But at the same time, we try to have an element of jointness, of joint courses within each curricula. And we really see the European degree not as, let's say, the starting point to have international collaboration, but really as the final and, let's say, more fully fledged and more, let's say, joint type of collaboration that can emerge and can start from more, let's say, modular and courses level. And I believe, of course, this is one of the beliefs of our alliance, but I believe in general this is an approach that all your institutions and you really need to take into account, because indeed, I think now here in this room, but in general in Europe, we have a high diversity of higher education institutions on the terms of the target audiences that we have, the competencies, the skills, and the areas where each institution is working. And really now, in this moment of change, we've seen many, many times that the road will be bumpy or not according to the pictures we've been seeing today. And definitely all your institutions in a couple of decades will be in a completely different place than they are now. But at the same time, we'll also be in completely different places among each other, meaning that really the end, let's say, goal and the end goal of our transformation that we are facing really must need to be a fit for purpose for the higher education institutions which we are in. And indeed, this is, of course, here we have in front of us mostly leaders from these higher education institutions. And really, of course, this is really a call of, I think we have very good principles on how to do change leadership, thanks to the previous presentation. But of course, here we also have a call to really make change only and always considering what is our final goal for, let's say, the future of higher education.
Thank you very much. And now, please, just offer your final reflections about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a quick reflection to the different themes, because I see that the time is running. So for the European degree label, so we are practically at the end of the conceptualization and development phase. So we now have to do it. And we hope that as soon as this autumn, the first labeled program will be there, and students can get their degrees with the label. As I already mentioned, that there are two calls that are now under evaluation. One is for universities to labelize their programs. We received about 170 programs that universities would like to label. Of course, it's a selection procedure, so we don't know at the end how many will get funding for this, but of course it can be done without funding as well. So we know that there are at least 170 joint programs that want to get the label, which is a good news for us, and also the support for authorities, member states to develop the ecosystem to a little bit sweeten this process of changing legislation, because some support, European support, always helps to put it on the agenda and help authorities to really do it now after so many years. So that's another thing. And finally, what came out quite frequently when we were speaking about the label and the degree is that ultimately it will be a success only if it's useful for the students. If it's not useful for the students, then yeah, we can do whatever we want, but at the end it will die. So we would also like to have some very clear branding for this European degree label. We have already a proposed logo for it, which is very nice, and have a communication campaign so that employers also understand what the label means. So what can be as added value there. So this branding and communication is a very important element for the degree. In relation to AI, it's a very important topic. We see a lot of appetite, both from member states and institutions, to have some kind of a European level discussion, how to address it, and to see what the EU level can do to support institutions and member states on this journey for AI. I have a 19-year-old daughter who is at university. She's my guinea pig or personal sandbox, or I don't know what, how to use AI at university. And as far as I see, the first thing that needs to be very clear, what is AI and what it is not. Because as far as I see, many students are using AI tools as super Google. So they are trying to find things what they can very easily find with a Google search through the AI tools now, because there is so much hype around it. So I think it's important to clarify what it is AI for, and where it is useful, and where it's not, doesn't make sense to use it. So we also see a lot of strategic tensions around this. Technological advancement and environmental sustainability, for example. So my daughter is always telling me that, okay, one AI search, now I used, I don't know how many liters of water. And they are very conscious about it. So that's also an important issue. Efficiency and quality and inclusion and innovation and competitiveness. So how can these tension points can be brought together? So starting with legislative compliance with the AI Act, which classifies education as a high-risk area for AI. It is really a place for the EU to at least provide some guidance and generate discussion around this. So this is absolutely on the table for higher education policy. And finally, for the leadership, I think it was 2-3 years ago that we adopted a council recommendation on attractive and sustainable academic careers, and there it was also very clear that to go to that direction, leadership is key. So that's the basis, and now based on that, we are working on a competency framework for academic staff. Linked to the research comp and research management comp that has already been designed, and all the other competency frameworks that are out there, filling the gaps that's important for education, to be clear what kind of competencies are necessary for an education perspective. And we intend that this competency framework should guide everybody who uses it through a journey of all these different domains are there, so they don't have to go through all the 55 or even more competencies, but have a personalized journey to see what their competencies or their competency lacks, or what is necessary. And this could be also something that used by institutions and the institutional leaders to see what kind of competencies are missing and what they should look for if they would like to achieve certain goals. So these are basically what we are currently doing on these 3 fields. And thank you very much for the invitation and a very interesting discussion.
Oh. Thank you very much. We bring this conversation to a close. I would like to just highlight 3 brief ideas or messages about what lies ahead. The first one is that we need to move beyond pilots. We need to navigate dilemmas. And the third one is that we need to invest in shared trust, for sure, capacity and evidence. That's something that we have to take in mind. And finally, I would like to thank all the panelists, the 3 ones that we have had the opportunity to listen, but the previously ones. And also I would like to thank the team, the EADTU team, whose work and commitment have made this meeting possible. So thank you very much. And I will see you very good weekend, and to see you next year, and to work together for a lot of time ahead. So thank you very much.